How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to Project Drift Truck. Today, I don't exactly know what we're doing, but we're gonna play around with suspension. We've got an entire truck suspension right here. We got an entire Miata suspension over there. We're gonna see what works and what doesn't. Hopefully, by the end of the day, we have the steering rack mounted, we have the Miata knuckles on here, and well, that's all we can get done right now. But that would still be a lot of progress. So hopefully we can get that all done by the end of the day. I'm pretty sure this is gonna work, but I don't know. So let's get started and find out, I guess. So, this is the stock suspension on the truck. It's actually a really good suspension setup. The only annoying, unfortunate thing is the torsion bar and the steering box. I already figured out that we can delete the torsion bar and replace this shock with a Miata coilover. We will have to make a custom strut tower. We're also gonna have to get a custom adjustable up control arm at some point to help with camber and whatnot. But for now, the stock control arm will work. So I'm gonna start off by kind of testing the steering rack with this hub, just making sure that will work, and then I'll pull these hubs off and try to make the Miata hubs work. In order to do this testing, we gotta go ahead and steal a steering rack. Toe might be a little bit off. It's got way too much toe. The steering rack is longer than the steering box. So this is about where the steering rack is gonna go. As you can tell, it works. It's just the tie rods are way too long, so right now it's got like 1,000,000 degrees of toe out. But this is the Miata steering rack right here, and this is the drift truck steering shaft. Right now, the rack isn't in the right place, but these things just bolt together. It just bolts on. Once we get this more figured out, we'll make some mounts off of that subframe thing. The only issue that I'm seeing is probably the stock sway bar. I was planning on switching that anyway though, so that's not a huge issue. And when this is much lower, the angle of this steering rack will be pretty high, so we can probably flip this around and go up like it's supposed to. One thing that is gonna help with this toe is putting a Miata hub on here, because the hub, the tie rod end on the hub is a little bit closer in, so a little bit farther apart. So we're gonna go ahead and try to do this. We're gonna unbolt the factory hub, and then we're gonna have to modify this rear ball joint and hopefully bolt the new hub back on, or the Miata hub on. So I was working on pulling the Miata hubs off of that suspension. Zach stopped by. He's a little dirty. He's taken the B2200 engine off our hands temporarily. He's gonna do some special stuff on his channel, and he's gonna rebuild it, and he's gonna make a video series about it.
Not a rotary. I think I'm gonna stick with that. I kind of like that.
Yeah, no, that's good.
Because it's not a rotary.
Right, yeah, he always does rotary stuff, and now he wanted to learn how to rebuild a piston engine.
I don't know what else is on.
Please don't break my wall. Zach doesn't know how to work on cars, fun fact.
I don't know how to work out piston.
But as you can tell, I successfully got the hubs off of the Miata, so we're gonna start test fitting those after we get the hubs off the B2000. Oh God. So after some closer analysis, it looks like the Miata hubs also won't work. The distance between the lower ball joint and the upper ball joint is way too big for the Miata hub. In addition to that, both the upper and lower ball joints are different sizes, so we can make it work, but there's really no point. The only benefit of running the Miata hub is that it's a 4x100 wheel, so I can get a common wheel. However, I did find a 6-lug to 5-lug wheel adapter, so we can use the factory hubs and still have some common wheels. So that'll fix that. So yeah, the parts car Miata, really all we are using from it is the steering rack. So let's go ahead and make that work, shall we? We're gonna go ahead and start mounting that up. I'm going to delete some of the steering box stuff right now, and then we can get to work. Removing both of the hubs was a complete waste of time. But to be fair, we needed to replace these ball joints anyway. They were shot, so I guess that's a pro, maybe. Although we're gonna replace the upper, whatever, it doesn't matter. This is just about where the steering rack is gonna go. The one trouble I was having is that in order for it to be centered, it has to be pretty far to the right, and it just barely clears the mounts for the motor mounts. I just finished making these little plates. This is what the steering rack is going to bolt to. So what I'm gonna go ahead and do now is kind of mock them up on the steering rack and then weld some nuts on the back of them, so when we install the steering rack in the car, we don't have to get a wrench behind the mount that we're making in order to hold the nut while we're bolting it in. Right, so the steering rack mount is in. It's not quite finished up. I want to block it all off and finish welding it all up, but I ran out of metal, and right now it's plenty strong for putting it in there and testing it. I probably wouldn't want to drift it like this, but it's good for testing. Hopefully it works, because I didn't really test to make sure it worked in every direction. I just kind of put it in there and welded it up. What we're gonna do now is actually make sure it works. We're going to go ahead and put the new ball joints on the knuckles, put the knuckles back in the car. We have to chop the inner tie rods to make it so they actually work. Problem with this is that in order to get the top ball joint on, I need to jack it up, and as soon as I start jacking it up, it starts tipping the entire thing. Unbolt the torsion bars. I gotta do it eventually, might as well do it now. Just sit slammed when the bump stops. I think that's a good idea, let's do it. The torsion bars are disconnected so I can jack up the control arms without having any resistance. I did also discover that this entire time when this truck was on the lift, it was super imbalanced, so much I could just very easily lift it up. It's a pretty light truck, and we got rid of the super heavy 4-cylinder and trans and anything else that was in the front. So all the weight was in the back. So when it was on the lift, it was like rocking back and forth and like, oh God, that was so sketchy. It almost fell off for sure. So we're gonna put the hubs back on, put the wheels on, scoot it forward, then jack it up again with better weight balance. All right, boys, mini truck dumped on its nuts. Oh, yes, I'd say yes, hell yes. That's about how low I want it, actually. Ignore the back. But the front, it's funny, this is on the bump stops, it still is. Gosh. So I discovered something that was super obvious this entire time, and I can't believe I didn't see it. I assumed on this steering rack that the mounting holes were in the middle. So right here in the middle of these two mounting holes is the middle of the steering rack. Wrong. Obviously, look at this big plop right here. If I treat this as the middle of the steering rack, then it's not centered, because this is longer, this side's longer. So these mounting holes in the steering rack aren't centered. I made mounts to center them in the subframe on the truck. So when this is installed, it's sitting 2 inches to the driver's side of the truck. I don't know if I could just, cut 2 inches off this tie rod. Probably could, but I feel like that's sketchy. I don't think that's the right way to do it. So, thankfully it's not too difficult to fix this issue. All we have to do is make some new plates that will scooter over a bit. So that's what we're gonna do. Just kind of sucks because, well, that's a lot more time and I have to go get more metal and all this other stuff. And I was so close to being done, and I'm sick and I wanna go home and sleep, but I'm very determined to get this thing, the steering rack in and turning at least. Maybe not from the steering wheel, but turning by moving a wheel kind of thing. Having the wheels turn together, there we go, that's my wording I was looking for. It's time to go to the store. More bad news, in order to get the steering rack to fit 2 inches over, so it's in the center of the actual chassis of the subframe, it has to be at a different angle, which means I have to cut off these mounts and make new ones. And I already welded them all the way up, so that's gonna suck. The other thing I'm having an issue with is that since it's gonna be 2 inches to the left, the shaft that goes into the steering rack is gonna be 2 inches closer to the block. So I'm having a friend send me some measurements of a 1UZ to see if it'll fit. If it doesn't, then we might have to go back. God, so much work for nothing. I've literally spent probably about 30 hours doing all of this. Only thing we accomplished is we put new ball joints on it. I failed at putting the Miata knuckle on. I failed at putting the Miata steering rack on. I'm sorry, I really am. This is probably a really long video for no reason. I need a break. I can't keep on trying to do this. So I'm gonna take a break, come back at it tomorrow. It's gonna be a different video. This is my first time actually having to fabricate things right, and like with a big engine and all this other stuff, so it's a little troubling. By the way, guys, thank you for watching. We at least figured things out. I guess that's not a waste of time because now I know what to do. And we got to see how low it's gonna go. Probably actually it's gonna be lower than that because I'm gonna cut off the bump stops. I'll see you guys in the next video where we hopefully get the steering rack working. I can't let this defeat me though, because if I do, I'm gonna lose faith in this build. I'm not losing faith in this build. This build's gonna be awesome when it's done, all right? It's just gonna be a lot of custom stuff that I'm not great at yet, all right? Yeah, that's what I gotta tell myself. I'm gonna go get some coffee. Actually, no, I'm gonna get some sweet tea. Ooh, that sounds good. All right, bye guys. I'm gonna go enjoy some sweet tea, and then I'm gonna like play video games and relax because I just wanna die right now. I'm a human too, I'm sorry. I feel really bad. I already said sorry, okay, I'm sorry. Bye, I'm sorry, bye, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I'm saying sorry, God damn it. Look at how much angle this thing can get with stock knuckles. All right, we just have to imagine that. Just imagine big V8 noise. Full angle, except it's gonna be a lot more angle than this because we're gonna cut knuckles and stuff, and oh, it's gonna be so good.